I mean, it
What
might be
about,
too late for that now.
is that okay? You won't be able, I moved it over here and then when I do.
This. This is a remarkable place. A place steeped in history, where trails have been blazed, discoveries have been made, and lives have been changed forever. This is a place that holds questions and answers, problems and solutions. It's a place to tap into your creativity, curiosity, and ambition. This is a place to pursue what makes you, you. Here you'll be challenged and cheered, and you'll join a tradition of changemakers. This is a place you'll miss when you leave. Look around and picture yourself here, at this unique time, in this remarkable place. You'll be amazed at what you find. Welcome to UNC Greensboro. Find your way here.
Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited y'all have joined us all for our live stream regarding sophomores and juniors. My name is Whitney Belk, and I am one of the Assistant Directors of Admission at UNC Greensboro. I also serve as the Charlotte Regional Representative, so I'm based in the Charlotte metro area and have the opportunity to work with incoming students specifically from this area. I'm also so excited to be joined by some of our Spartan Guides tonight, and I will have them introduce themselves, starting with Kaylee.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited y'all are here tonight. My name is Kaylee. I'm originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm currently a junior at UNCG studying communication studies and minoring in psychology. As Whitney said, I am a Spartan Guide, but outside of that, I do serve as a first-year assistant in one of the offices we have on campus and a member of our Spartan orientation staff.
Awesome. Next, we'll have Kayla.
Hey y'all, my name is Kayla. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm a senior majoring in special and elementary education. And outside of being a Spartan Guide, I also represent the university and our chancellor as a member of Chancellor's Ambassadors Program, and I also serve as lead staff for our Spartan orientation staff.
All right, and last but not least, Augustine.
Hello, my name is Augustine. I'm a senior majoring in kinesiology with a minor in Spanish. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. And apart from being a Spartan Guide, I work as a front desk assistant in the admissions office, also as a student ambassador, and as a Spartan orientation staff member.
All right. And again, we want to make sure that you all, this is an interactive live stream. So please text us all your questions that you have to our texting line. We do have some folks helping us, so that will be letting us know if you have any questions. So we would love for you to hear from you in our text line. So be sure to share your questions there with us. All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So again, our goal for this evening is to share with you all some tips and tricks for the college admissions process. We know that this is kind of an intense process, but we want to help you again have some unique tips specifically from us at UNC Greensboro Admissions, and also from some students who are currently students at our university, and then can ultimately share some things that they wish they would have known, and a little bit more from the student perspective. All right, so one of the first things that I would like to touch on is it's so important for students to know what options are available, especially for specific degrees and specific career paths. It's important to know which opportunities and which certificates, degrees are required for which specific paths. So again, it's important to know Is the specific program that I'm interested in going into a specific career path, does it require a diploma? Does it require a specific certificate? Or does it require a bachelor's degree, master's, or doctoral degree? That's definitely something that we want students to be aware that it's important to know your options and know kind of what those opportunities look like. We also think it's very important for students to know what is the best fit for them. You will hear this term a lot in the college search process, as a lot of different institutions and those who are helping you throughout the process will want to know what is important to you in the process. And that's really what that term best fit means. Is it something that there is a specific, again, career path that you want to go into and that you know you need a specific degree for? Is there a specific location in a city, an urban setting, a rural setting? Is there a specific size of an institution? Are there specific types of dorms that you would like? Is it something that once you come on campus, it feels good to you? Or do you know you want to study abroad? What, again, is kind of driving that force, and seek colleges that offer these things that are the most important to you. So now I'm going to ask our Spartan Guides to share a little bit about what was important to them in the college search process and ultimately what kind of helped them find their way to UNCG. So we'll start with Kaylee. Can you share what was important to you in the college search process?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things when I was looking for a college was location. I did not want to go really far from home, and luckily UNCG is kind of right in the middle of everything. So either way that I went, it was going to take me somewhere that was close, which I really appreciated. And beyond that, I just had the right feel when I stepped on campus. As soon as I took my first tour and I walked around campus, I felt at home here. So those are my two things when I came to looking to college and universities when applying.
Awesome. What about you, Kayla?
Definitely like Kaylee, since we're both from Raleigh, I didn't want to be too far away from home, especially being an only child. I didn't want to leave my mom alone, and I'm 5 hours away. So I definitely wanted to, have the opportunity to come home on the weekends if I wanted to. And also, another big thing for me is the involvement opportunities that the university offers. I was really involved in high school, and I wanted to carry that over into my college career. So making sure that there was tons of extracurricular activities I can participate in, along with service events and all other stuff.
And Augustine?
Well, apart from Kayla and Kaylee, I'm from Greensboro, so I did want to kind of stay at home in a way. I live about 15 minutes away from the university. So that's something that I was really looking into. So as you all know, Greensboro is a college town. So UNCG fits in there in that section of I just wanted to feel at home. 15 minutes away, that's pretty much like at home. And then I also had the opportunity in high school to participate in a program there at UNCG, which, like Kaylee had said, once I was there at the university and actually felt and seen the facilities, it just felt right to me. It's just this feeling that it's like, yes, this is the place that I want to go. UNCG is where I want to go and study here my 4 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that kind of goes to show that students really value different things in the college search process. That's why there are so many institutions, and creates a large search for the right fit for you. But again, knowing that all of these students that we have here ultimately found their way at UNCG, that's a great kind of contribution to the university, and again, important things to consider. Oops. Okay. So a few things to think about in the search process as well, and when you're thinking about the application. Now, it's important to know what universities require. So this is something that definitely, as sophomores and juniors, you have the opportunity to still continue to plan ahead with your course schedule. So when thinking about that, it's important to know what colleges or universities require. So there are some specific requirements that the UNC system does require for our incoming students, and you'll see those listed here. In North Carolina, a lot of these are going to be graduation requirements specifically for your high school, but it's always important to be reminded of these as you're thinking about registration, whether you're a junior upcoming for your senior year, because before you know it, it's going to be the spring semester and you're going to be registering for either your senior year or your junior year, no matter what grade you're in. So continue to think about these requirements. Do you have 4 units of English, 4 units of math, 3 units of science, 2 units of a social studies or social science, 1 needs to be US history, and then 2 units of a consecutive foreign language. So this is definitely something you'll want to think about as you're going into the scheduling process and knowing that this is something that we are required to consider by the UNC system, and if you're interested in coming to UNC Greensboro. Okay, now what? Now that you kind of maybe know a little bit about what specific requirements, maybe what certificate or what bachelor's degree or maybe a master's degree that you need, now that you know what courses that you need to apply to specific institutions and you know a little bit about why that fit is important, kind of now what? There's a lot of that kind of starts the process, but then we also, what do we need to do now? So the next thing is to narrow your search. Narrowing your search is really important as we want students to be confident in their college applications, but we know that it can be very overwhelming if you apply to many, many different institutions as far as different requirements that are needed. So we want students to kind of narrow down their search. We also think it's important for students to get involved with different college fairs that are happening at their school. A lot of high schools host admissions counselors like me and some of my other colleagues in the admissions office to do specific visits to your high school. So make sure you attend those specific events. Also make sure that you're just connecting with us in some kind of way or coming to a campus visit, open house events. This is something that we really want students to be familiar with a university's campus as they're kind of narrowing down that search as well. It's also important to kind of sort and balance your college list. I think that again is going to be very important in just doing the research and knowing what requirements are required for which specific schools, as it may be unique to specific institutions. And then how many schools will you apply to? What, again, feels like a good number for you? There's not necessarily a magic number. Your list can go anywhere from 3 to beyond. We really think that it's important to apply to a couple different institutions. And that's what I hear from all my colleagues on the high school counseling side. And so that's typically a tip that I hear from them as well. One thing I also wanted to mention too, as far as hearing some things I've heard from my high school counselor colleagues in the field is, again, making sure students are being transparent in the application process and really making sure, knowing that you might get a lot of questions from family members, but again, be open and honest with yourself and realistic in this process, because I think that that's something that this is your journey too. So you want to make sure that it's the best fit for you. Okay, I've touched a little bit on this already, but again, how do you know what you need? This is something that's very important and can vary among different institutions. This is where it gets important to know and do a little bit of research on a university's website. It's important to go on college tours and campus visits. It's also important to ask questions, again, of admissions counselors like me, and stay organized in this process and definitely kind of plan ahead. This is something that also you'll want to make sure that you look up different requirements, as those do sometimes have a tendency to change a little bit every year. So if you are a sophomore right now, knowing that sometimes deadlines may change for the upcoming year based off of universities changing those. Again, different initiatives may change, and with test scores needed, test scores not, which we'll touch on in a little bit. So again, know what you need specifically from those institutions and what you can be doing now. Also, researching and making sure you organize those application deadlines and timelines. Also, start learning and becoming familiar with a lot of the admissions terms. There are a lot of kind of different words that you'll hear universities share. And a lot of times they'll throw those out to you and you're like, I don't even know what these mean. There are so many different options. One of the biggest things that we see is going to be what type of applications students are submitting. You'll see here, a lot of universities have early decision, early action, or priority consideration. Some have regular decision, some have rolling admission. So become familiar with those terms because they all mean maybe something a little bit different. For example, early decision, you'll hear a lot of times, which is a binding agreement. A binding agreement to an institution means that if you apply early decision to a university, that means you are essentially committing and saying, yes, if I apply to your institution and I'm admitted, I am willing to withdraw all of my other applications from other institutions, and I am all in with your school. One caveat of that is that means that you are committing to the school without knowing any scholarships you're going to be awarded or any financial aid that you're going to be awarded. So knowing that maybe early decision, maybe it's the first option that pops up on an application, but really kind of thinking through, okay, what does this specific term mean and what does this commitment mean? A lot of schools have early action where students receive an early answer on their application, but it's again not going to be that binding commitment. Also, regular decision, those are typically the later spring deadlines. And then some schools are rolling admission and where students can apply, and admissions counselors at different universities are really kind of giving decisions as they're made. So really kind of rolling them out as you go. So again, start thinking about those buzzwords that you may hear specifically when you are doing research in different colleges and universities, as those terms you'll hear a lot. Also start researching and organizing a little bit about, are there specific outside scholarship applications that I should be working on? Does a school automatically consider me for scholarships? Again, I think that this is something that going into the process, once the kind of all the applications open up, it then can get overwhelming to then start doing the research and then applying to it. So if you go into, start doing the research now and bringing kind of a collective list, that's going to be important. So I wanted to ask our students on a few tips. Was there anything specifically that was extremely helpful for you in kind of knowing what you needed in this college search process? We'll start with you, Kaylee.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind that was really helpful to me was having that support system of my high school advisor and meeting with them and my counselor specifically. So I knew what requirements that I needed to meet and I didn't miss a deadline or anything like that. And I felt like I was on track because those deadlines approach very quickly. Even at my sophomore year when I was thinking about it and getting more into the process in my junior year, because it was just super difficult. So definitely keeping me on track and just making sure that I met the requirements for each college and university that I applied to, so that way there was no miscommunication or anything like that.
Awesome. What about you, Kayla?
Yeah, like Kaylee, I've had lots of different support systems, but definitely the biggest one that I've had is actually talking with admissions counselors. I actually had the opportunity to meet with the UNCG admissions counselor in person, and she sat down with me and my mom and kind of worked through the application process. So what exactly is happening, the deadlines I need to be aware of, and also kind of help me navigate that website, because I know, every university website is kind of different. So she kind of helped me walk through, like, all right, so this is where you're going to need to go to submit this application. This is where you're going to need to go to look at the different scholarships and financial aid and all that stuff. So that was definitely a really, really big help for me and my mom, since this is our first time, like I said, I'm an only child, so we haven't done this before. I've also had teachers at my school kind of help me with that as well. We'd spend time in class working on essays and things like that. So I definitely think if you can talk to your teachers and see if you can take some time, during class to help write those essays and things like that.
Augustine?
Yeah, so basically, Kayla just took the words out of my mouth as well. I spoke to an admissions counselor when I was in high school to get kind of like the feeling and the idea of what this process is going to be, those deadlines. And as well, I had a lot of teachers in high school help me support and keep me on my game, on my track. One thing that I did do also is look up YouTube videos on like college processes and like what to know. So like those YouTube videos actually show you like to be accepted into college, you're gonna have to do the application, submit FAFSA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I had an idea of what to expect. So actually like YouTubing, college requirements, just anything kind of like podcasts in a way, those actually really helped me as well.
Awesome. That's a great point, and something that I just really thought of too, especially for underclassmen who are, starting to think about this process, is following colleges and universities on social media. That's a great way, as far as Instagram. And I know we have a great social media, for UNC Greensboro. We also have students who take that over and kind of give you like a day in the life of a student. So that's another great way to start getting kind of that feel without even going to campus and just looking on your phone. Okay, so now to the nitty gritty. What do colleges really look for when you ultimately get to that senior year, and what kind of helps them make an admissions decision? Ultimately, the overall goal is universities really just hope to find students who are going to succeed in their college and beyond. This is something that, again, universities look and gauge that in several different ways. Again, we'll use different test scores, GPA requirements, class rank. Again, we want to see kind of that readiness, how ready you are to attend the specific university. Also, GPA and transcript. We want to see classes that you chose to take, and then ultimately how you performed in those classes. What type of rigor of classes did you take? Were there specific trends in your transcript in your grades that we can see? I also want to recognize that, especially in this world that we have been living in over the past 18 months, it's important for students to realize too that we kind of know we've been experiencing it on the university level when it came to all the shutdowns. Fortunately, we were able to stay open, so we are very proud of that. We were one of the only UNC system schools to be able to do that, so we again are very proud of that. But I just want to recognize and acknowledge that we know that the virtual learning environment was challenging for some students, and that we also receive school profiles that gives us information about, when students were virtual and if they were virtual for what amount of time. So we will be aware of that as well. Also, another way that we kind of determine and look at applicants is through SAT or ACT scores. Again, that may or may not be required by a specific university that you're looking at, but really the ultimate goal, again, of these is going to really providing us with a standard way to look at students. So again, that's going to be something that some colleges look for in the process, but not all of them. Oops. Also, extracurricular activities. Extracurricular activities are something that, again, we like to see that students are involved, and especially that you have had either a long-term commitment or held leadership roles within those specific organizations. I also want to recognize here that I know that those opportunities have looked a little bit different in those experiences, as maybe a community service event that you really wanted to get involved with has been virtual over the past year, or they are no longer taking volunteers due to COVID restrictions. So again, I think it's important to just share what opportunities that you've had and what experiences that you had up to this point, and know that we're hopeful that as students are back in school, have the opportunity to continue to build that resume as well. And then last but not least, letters of recommendation and personal essays. Again, the purpose of these is just to show your potential, and for us to not necessarily only have to consider your GPA and other requirements. So again, we know that that is a great opportunity and the time for you to really bring your application to life outside of those kind of different fill in the blank questions or demographic information, or gives us a little bit more to consider. All right, so I want to give a couple tips and tricks specifically that may relate to our sophomore students, and then we'll cover our juniors next. But when thinking about what you can be doing right now The biggest thing as a sophomore is to really just continue studying and keeping up your grades. I think making sure that you are focusing on your academics. We know that obviously there's a lot going on, and we want students to know that we recognize that, but we really want students to make sure that they're focusing on their academics. That's something that we really want to encourage that. We also want to encourage sophomore students to start considering taking a little bit of rigorous coursework if you have not already. That is something that we really want to see, that you have challenged yourself academically, but know that we know that there are going to be limits to that, right? So we are not going to be expecting, all the AP classes, all of the dual enrollment classes. We want it to be whatever is the best fit for you. So if you're planning on majoring in biology, maybe try to take an honors or AP bio class, but knowing that we want you to succeed and excel in the subjects that are your favorites and that you enjoy. So start thinking about that. Also start thinking about ways to get involved within your school, because really as a sophomore, you have really your sophomore, junior, and then senior year to be heavily involved in some type of organization. So then to kind of show that consistency is important. And then also start thinking about test prep for any standardized tests that are required. That's something that we find, really any kind of test prep that students can do. That is what I hear from my high school counselor colleagues, that is very important in thinking about that as well. All right, for juniors, a lot of this that we've talked about tonight definitely applies to you as well. And this is going to be in that really starting to visit different colleges and universities. We also want students to start narrowing down their list a little bit that we talked about earlier, making sure that you kind of know what's important to you in the process. Also be aware that a lot of colleges and universities are back aware and available for open houses and different campus visits as well. If you come to visit UNCG, you'll go around campus with one of our Spartan guides that are here tonight. So that's definitely something that they want you to come so they can show off the university. We also, again, thinking about those timelines and deadlines. So are there any SAT or ACT dates coming up? Or is there anything, again, that you can get involved with this year to really have this involvement, really this year going on into senior year, that we can see that commitment? Again, just being aware of what you can do now in building that resume that ultimately is going to bring your application to life when you go through that process during your senior year. All right, so I also want to talk a little bit about how, now that we've talked about this kind of generally, what are things that we look at specifically at UNC Greensboro? There are several things this year that we are taking into consideration. One is that we do all of the time or every semester when we're reviewing applications. One of those is going to be, again, as I mentioned, overall GPA. We're going to dig deeper into your transcript to get a little bit more information about who you are as a student, the types of classes that you've taken, and then again, how that would come over to us at UNCG. Also, core courses, we're going to be looking at, have you taken those minimum course requirements that we mentioned earlier, and how did you perform in those classes? Personal essay, that's something that is optional for us at UNCG, but we highly encourage students to submit that in order to give us a little bit of glimpse into your life. And then extra content such as letters of recommendation. That's something that we really want to see and to bring your application to life, as I mentioned earlier. We are unsure of what test scores are going to look like in the future as a requirement, as you may have heard some of your senior friends mention, or those who may be freshmen in college this year. The UNC system granted a waiver for test scores for students who were applying for 2021 and 2022, but we are not sure what that's going to look like next year. So again, that's something that I'm encouraging students at this point in the process, without us having kind of any indication what that's going to look like in the future, to go ahead and start registering for those tests and prepping for those as if we will need those, because we likely won't know until much later next summer. All right, and then at UNCG, what specifically are we looking for in the application process as well? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to kind of highlight these numbers as kind of I think a goal just to see what is kind of an average weighted GPA that a college or university needs. What is an average SAT or ACT score? Again, I talked about all this research earlier that you can be doing, but as a part of that research, going on websites and doing your research to kind of see, okay, ultimately, what are kind of these goals in these areas? I do want to highlight that these are just averages. Some are above, some are below, and averages have a tendency to change every year based off of applicants. So again, that's important to keep in mind that these are just the averages from this past year. So typically universities that's what they're going to provide you with are those averages. I want to provide you all with my contact information before we go into kind of our Q&A tonight. So just wanted to share this with you again in case you have any follow-up questions after our time together tonight. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. All right. All right, so one of the things that we received a question about, Kaylee, and I'm going to have you answer this for us. What is something that you wish you would have known as a sophomore and junior in high school that could ultimately would have been very helpful to know?
Yeah, I think it would have been helpful to know all of the events that all of the admissions counselors put on for prospective students. I think it would have been really helpful to go to them. And ultimately, in making the college decision, I was a little confused because I didn't really know much. I had a campus tour to go off of. So definitely kind of immersing myself in the environment that those colleges have. And I know that UNCG hosts a lot of open houses and just events for prospective students. So I really think those would have been more helpful, and I would have done my own research more on them.
What about you, Kayla? Anything you wish you would have known?
I feel like this one is probably pretty common, but it's something I didn't do, and that's a campus tour. I definitely recommend if you have the opportunity to visit any university that you're interested in, take that opportunity, especially now since universities are slowly opening up and allowing guests on campus. I feel like seeing pictures online is one thing, but actually being at the university, you can actually kind of close your eyes and think, what would it be like if I was a student walking to class? Like, is this where I'd be eating my lunch in the middle of the day? Or is this where I'd be studying and going to class? So I definitely recommend. I know as common as it sounds, but I didn't do a campus tour, and I definitely think I should have done that so I could have seen in person the options and the places that I was applying to.
Awesome. That is great advice. And I will say that's definitely something that we in the admissions office, we love to have you on campus. We want students to come and see. So I think that's a great point. One question that we have as well, and Augustine, I'll let you answer this as well. Do students have to know exactly what they want to do or what they want to major in before applying to college? Like, is that something that has to be locked in, or what are some resources available for that?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of universities and colleges, they offer a exploratory program or undecided program. UNCG, we have an exploratory program here. So the way that works is basically you come in as an undecided, and you take a lot of general ed classes. Those general ed classes are what's gonna kind of guide you into the direction or kind of steer you and show you what classes, what majors we have here at UNCG. So you're gonna be taking maybe a biology, a math, maybe you fall in love in biology and you're like, cell's really my thing. Animal science, that's my thing. So I'm gonna major in biology, or you might hate it and steer into the math direction because you took a math class. So we have those options here at UNCG as exploratory majors. So it's okay. We're young. I can tell you right now, I still have a lot of kind of ideas, and I'm kind of a little bit in a pickle as to where I'm going to go next and to further my education. So I'm kind of in the same shoes as many people. So it's okay to start off as exploratory and end up majoring in something further along the way.
That's a great point. And I know that some universities require, when you are going into the application process, you're required to know you apply to the university itself, but then you also have to apply specifically to your major. Now, there are a handful of those maybe specific to UNCG, such as in our College of Visual and Performing Arts. There may be some that require an audition. There are some specific majors that require an additional application once you get here. But I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is, especially at UNC Greensboro, we have over 175 different majors and concentrations. So one thing that I think it's important for those in the college search process to think about is knowing that when you're coming into an institution, are there a variety of majors that if you one day are like, I want to be an accountant, and then the next day you're like, I'm really into international global affairs, peace and conflicts, like what is that? Well, is that something that a university can provide you? So I think that that's something too, when doing your research among institutions, it's helpful to think big picture, like, okay, what if I change? Is this university still going to support me in that academic journey? Okay. One question, again, we have is when you should apply to colleges. I know that is something that we really want students to start applying early, but really when is early as you kind of go through this process. So one thing that we really want students to think about and remember as a sophomore and junior is that when you're applying to colleges, you're applying typically in October or November of your senior year. So with that being said, really you are going to only have until the end of your junior year to kind of establish that GPA for what colleges and universities are going to see on your transcript. So really, as a sophomore and a junior, continue to think about what you're doing right now and keeping those grades up, because you're really applying again in that middle of senior year. We're going to have the chance to see your senior year schedule, but it's not necessarily we're not going to see those grades necessarily unless some universities may request a copy of your mid-year transcript. But really knowing that the application process typically opens around August and goes throughout the fall and into the early spring of your senior year. But remembering that GPA is really established by the end of your junior year. All right. What is something, and I'll direct this to Kayla. What is something, one of our questions is, what is something that I can be doing now to really build my resume? So we touched a little bit about extracurricular activities. Are there any other suggestions that you have to really build a student's resume?
Yeah, if you're working like a part-time job, you can definitely put that in on your resume. A big thing, like, you already talked about, is try to get involved in any way you can, whether that's at your high school, or if you're doing like off-campus service and things like that. We recommend try to get involved as much as you can, if that's something that you can do. Any type of like leadership development things that you've participated in, we definitely recommend adding that on your resume as well. But definitely use that time when you do choose to apply to university, use that essay space. If you don't put it on your resume, use that essay space to tell us more about yourself and tell us about, the involvement opportunities that you did and how you grew as a leader or whatever position that you chose to be in.
Thank you so much. Well, we have some great questions coming in. So again, don't forget to text us your questions and we'll be sure to address them before we wrap up tonight. All right. Kaylee, was there in the application process, or when you were was there like a magic number of campus tours that you went on, or any type of search process, or what was that kind of process like for you?
So the first thing I did when I was looking into the universities that I wanted to apply to was look at their mission statements to see if it kind of felt at home to me. And then I would kind of base it off of, okay, I actually want to see this campus from there. Because I had a long list. I had a lot of schools that I wanted to apply to. And I'm a very indecisive person. And so I was like, what feels right to me? Was one of the big things. So looking at their mission statement, what the school values, and then how it felt to me on campus. So in that application process, I kind of went through, one was the magic number of a campus tour for me at UNCG, which is shocking because I normally, again, I'm very indecisive. And then as soon as I walked on campus, I was so sure. I was like, you know what? No, like I knew that it felt right here. So that's the biggest tip that I have for you all is if it feels right, do it. Go from there, go with your gut feeling on it, because that's what I did. And I ended up here and I've never been happier. So definitely that's my biggest tip of advice. And also just keeping that in mind throughout the process, because you don't have to have it all figured out when you start applying. Take it in small bits. Don't try to do it all at once and just kind of go from there.
That's awesome advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that that is important to utilize those mission statements and institutional web pages to kind of see, again, if those, whether, values and things like that, that those really match up to. That's a great point. Kayla, I know you mentioned earlier that one thing that you did was connecting with your admissions counselor. How did you kind of figure out like who your admissions counselor was, and how did you connect with that person?
Yeah, so funny story. I think I've already applied to UNCG, or it might have been like right before I did, but they actually contacted me. I don't know how they got in contact, but I was just scrolling through my email and I saw one of the admissions counselors like, hey, Kayla, let's connect and give you more information about the universities. I was like, okay. So I kind of took them up on that offer. But definitely you can look on the admissions website and kind of see where your admissions counselors are located. I just happened to be lucky enough to where my admissions counselor is located right in Raleigh. So, we met up at a Starbucks right after school and we kind of walked through that application process. So definitely, like you've already said, look on those admissions websites and see exactly what admissions counselors in your area. And if not, once again, try to get on campus and schedule a campus tour, because that way you have a guaranteed opportunity to speak with the admissions counselor in person.
Awesome, Kayla. And that's a great point. We do have admissions representatives really located all across our state. I specifically am the regional representative and am based in the Charlotte metro area. We have Sam, who is our regional representative in the Raleigh area. And then we have currently right now many admissions counselors out and about across the state of North Carolina doing different college fairs and available to meet you in your area. So that's something that I really would encourage you to reach out and utilize our specific website and kind of determine if you could connect in person, or you can schedule virtual meetings with us on websites as well through several different platforms. So be sure to do that as well. All right, we have another question too. Again, and I touched on this earlier regarding test scores, kind of thinking and planning ahead for those. What is that going to look like? Again, we're really unsure what that's going to look like in the future. The waivers that were granted for us were really for 2021 and 2022 applicants. So for really after that, we're unsure what that's going to look like. And that'll be a kind of a directive from the UNC system that's going to come. So for example, for 2022 applicants, we found out over the summer. And so that's something that we're unsure what that is going to look like. But I think that, it's important to start kind of considering that those may be a part of the process again as well. One tip before we wrap up, I also wanted to mention too, is that I know that this process feels like a lot of it is kind of out of your control. You're like, okay, I put all this information and I'm putting my whole life into this application, and you're really, giving it to the university. And yes, universities do have some, decisions to make in the admissions process, but I really like to think of it kind of like a tennis match or like volleyball court. You kind of have like you have the ball's in your court, right? And so you do have some of this control of things that you can be doing now, especially as a sophomore and junior, with your grades, the rigor of the classes that you're taking, how much you're studying, and the really effort you're putting forward into your academics. Test prep, that's something that I know for me, I took the SAT a couple times and I didn't do anything in between, and I consistently got the same score. So again, I think that's important. Know that that's something you can control is the test prep. You can also control the relationships that you build now with teachers as well, and who, kind of thinking ahead, who is going to write letters of recommendation for me. Keep also a running list of things that you have been involved with too, as kind of, it's important to have kind of a list that you can provide to those writing those letters of recommendation. And really sharing, these are things that I've been involved with, so they can really bring that to life. So those are all kind of things I like to think of, like you have that ball kind of in your court, you then kind of serve it over to the admissions offices. We kind of hold on to the ball for a little bit and make those decisions. And then we throw it back to you ultimately with a decision. So then again, if you're admitted, the ball's back in your court and you have the opportunity to make those decisions for yourself. So I know it seems like it's a chaotic process and that there is a lot out of your control, but think about now the things that you can control to ultimately help you reach those goals a little bit later on as well. All right. Well, I think that really wraps up our time together this evening as we've been through all of our questions. I appreciate you all joining us for this live stream regarding sophomores and juniors. I hope that it has been helpful for you all. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to our office. Come see us in the admissions office at UNC Greensboro. We are happy to help. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope y'all have a great night.